Okay, welcome back to another episode of the Always Forward podcast, and I'm here with Mike the Cop. What is your real name?
my real name's Mike Edwards.
Mike Edwards.
And,
Mike the Cop sounds cooler.
Yeah, although, you'll be the first public outlet to know that I'm retiring Mike the Cop, actually. So
really,
this will be the last public interview where maybe everybody will always know me as that on some level, I guess. But yeah man.
It's hard to get away from at this point, probably. But
right?
So you were a real cop. You weren't just like a meme cop.
Yeah, I was not just a cop on the internet. I was a real cop for 11 years.
Where at?
In the Detroit area, like bordering jurisdictions to the city. I never worked in the city proper.
Okay. What So what years? Tell me the years of service in the muck.
2009 is when I entered the academy, and then turned in everything for the last time last July, like headed into July 4th time zone, end of June, early July there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were older when you went
2020. I'm sorry. So 2020. Yeah.
Yeah. So you were older when you went in.
Yeah, I started when I was 33.
Whoa.
So I was definitely older.
What'd you do before that?
Man, I've been a serial entrepreneur for most of my life. So it's I had a window washing company. It was like one of the main things that I did, and I played on a professional blackjack team for a while. So I had a couple of different gigs going, and then
Mike, I think that's just gambling. I don't know if that's entrepreneurial work.
That's actually an addiction.
That's an addiction, sir. You might need to seek help for that if you're still doing that.
I called it a job. It made me feel better about myself. No, so yeah, then all the nonsense happened in the housing industry. Yep. And lost a bunch of bigger clients, and I decided I just sold the company off like for dirt cheap to my one employee, and was like, here you go, I'm gonna go to the police academy.
Excellent, man. So what did you do? I mean, obviously you were a patrol for a while. What did you do? Talk to me a little bit. Like, give me the rundown of your career, and then I want to get into some meat.
Yeah, man, it was I had a pretty straightforward career, all in patrol for the most part. My first job that I got hired at, I got laid off. Those cuts were really deep. We got laid off in 2012, and I was caught up in that big layoff, and it was due to some city corruption, lies. It's just typical politics stuff. A lot of those guys got their jobs back. But it turns out that when you write a letter that says that I don't ever want to work for a liar, and say that to admin's face and send it in an email,
doesn't work out.
They don't tend to call you back. So
yeah.
I went on to a different department and kind of had to start over again. Had to go through the training process, and then eventually became a training officer, and that was really my mainstay outside of like your normal patrol. I did drug interdiction on the expressway. So I was out there trying to get guns and dope off the main roads in and out of the city, and yeah, that was mostly it. And then Mike the Cop.
Go ahead.
I was just saying that then the Mike the Cop thing sort of like popped into the mix, and that created other opportunities. And
so that started before you got out.
Yeah.
Okay. Which I imagine did a little bit of good, actually. Probably some more positive PR than anything.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to think so. There's probably some people that disagree, but I think that the attention it drew to some of the nonprofit work we were doing, and the good that we've been able to bring to the table to organizations and cops, I think internally a lot of cops appreciate what we've done over the years with that.
I like it. I mean, hell, even your training, your joke videos to me are training videos. I'm like, no, literally, you should watch this. So, oh man. So what was your mindset back then? Like when you were being patrol or doing drug interdiction or doing, on the highway. I mean, guns, I can get that. Bad guys with guns, that's a bad thing. But like, where was your head at? What did you think was going on?
With regard to
Just the job. Like, was there any sort of like morally where you're like, fuck yeah, we're beating down the bad guys? I mean, obviously political, you went through what you say, 2009.
Yeah.
So like you went through quite the ups and downs of the political climate as a cop, right? Like good times, bad times, really bad times. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I mean, like when I came on, I was competing with so many people to get into the academy, into a department. I mean, you were taking tons of civil service exams. You were out there doing interviews, and you were stacked up against everybody who is performing at their best to get hired into good reputable departments and all that stuff. And then now they're like, what'd you say? You got your GED. Let's check your pulse. Yeah, that seems good enough. You can make a good cop.
Because who wants to do that job right now?
Yeah, exactly. So, I saw a lot of ups and downs. I think every cop has a life cycle, and when you're brand new, you know absolutely nothing. I mean, it's just deer in headlights. I think it helped that I was a little bit older. I already had kids, already had a family, already kind of had some life experience under my belt. Very, very different than some of the young guys that I would train that literally delivered pizzas and mom and dad paid for college, and then they have a CJ degree and never been in a fight, and they step into this world. But every cop's like that for the first year. You just don't know what you're doing. You're really learning. Then you hit your stride, and you feel like you're making a difference, and you are making a difference in the individual circumstances. Yeah. Everybody seems to think, I'm going to change the world. And then you realize politicians run police departments, and you're like, oh shit. All I have is the individual person that I can deal with that's right in front of me that I can help or hurt in the moment. And you have to learn to make that be enough for you, because you will not change the political forces, right?
As a
so
patrolman,
all you have is what's in front of you.
Yeah. I imagine it's a lot like the military too, right? Like I imagine there's a lot of, in my experience, there is a lot of transfer between the two.
Sure.
And so when you get in, you're green-eyed and bushy-tailed, you're all excited to do the thing. But if you get in as an older person, you realize what the BS is out the gate. Mm-hmm. Like you came in at what, did you say 33, 31?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. 33.
33. Like you knew going into there was going to be some political BS in that you had to deal with, but you could call it for what it was. You expected it. I think it shocks young guys coming in when they realize that there's a political aspect and there's bullshit involved in the job. It's like, surprise.
Yeah, usually it's like year 3 to 5,
right.
Somewhere in there, depending on how busy your department is. And by the time you get to that level of experience, you're like, what's going on around here? This isn't what I thought it was going to be.
Exactly. And then about 11, 12, you're burnt out, angry, drinking way too much coffee.
Yeah,
no many cigarettes.
Yeah, there should be no cops on the road past year 10. There's years 8 to 10. If you're at a moderate to busy department, you're done. You need to be there. You need to be reassigned. That's a whole other conversation. But we need to reimagine policing, but not in the way that pop culture thinks we do. But there's some things that need to be fixed for sure.
There is and not even that, but I've talked. I was one of the entry-level guys when they started pushing the TSAC program through the NSCA. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but basically tactical readiness, military, law enforcement, first responders, looking at those guys that are, 10, essentially 8 to 12 years. And it's funny because if you look at a military guy or any sort of first responder, they all start having the same issues around the 10 to 12 year mark.
Yep.
Hips, back, shoulders, all the stuff. And it's because, you got a patrol guy that's been sitting in his car for 10 years and essentially he goes from sitting to sprinting within a second. And all of a sudden you've got to do all these sort of things.
Well, you're lucky to find a 10 or 12-year guy sprinting anymore.
Right. He's probably like, nah, I'm good.
I'm good.
I'm good. Just we'll catch you around the block.
Yeah, exactly.
But there is a level of, I guess you could say tactical burnout that needs to be addressed. But they don't. They'll just use until you're all done, and then they'll call you a piece of shit and boot you out the door.
Yep, you'll be forgotten. Don't worry.
Yeah, and some other guy that's really excited will take your place.
Mm-hmm.
So, man, I want to bring up that I just launched. I don't know if you've caught any episodes of the Always Forward podcast, but I just got a Venezuelan who's, I think he's about to turn 50, who's running for political office. He's been here since he's 20 years old. Escaped communism, came here for the American dream, and now there's all these like red flags popping off, right, in what's going on in our country. And he basically, and I posted a clip. I don't know if you caught it. It was a clip on Instagram.
I didn't. I saw that the episode was live because the last one I listened to is I can't remember the exact title, but a 300-pound man transformation. Like that's the last one I heard. I saw that you had the new episode up, but yeah.
Yeah. So it was interesting that the clip that I put on Instagram was basically talking about how they are strategically trying to create a national police force.
Absolutely.
So, and basically the whole concept of like demonizing police, vilifying them, right? This across the board, then defunding the police, and then the crime goes up. And essentially this is what it is. Talk shit about the police, say they're not doing their job, defund them, the crime goes up. Now they need help. And it's so politically charged that he said cops are not just looking the other way because they'd rather just keep their job and not deal with it. Vice deal with it and essentially get locked up themselves or fired or charged or whatever. He said so the crime goes up, and then the next thing they basically do is now the federal government is funding the local polices, which they have say, and that just leads to a nationalized police force. So that was his stance, and when he laid it out that way, I'm like, oh man. He goes,
yeah, no,
hey. He goes, the reason why that I know this is because it's exactly what they did in Venezuela. They went from the fourth top wealthiest country in the world, and then was it late 90s, mid 90s, to now. I mean, everybody, well, not everybody, but those that know that it's a communist country, and people are really, really struggling there. So, anyways, with all that said, Mike, what's going on? Unravel that ball of yarn for me,
dude. I mean, it's dead on. That's exactly. I mean, I do believe there is an agenda. Now, what makes it complicated is the fact that there's just so much diversity across so many places and departments. You can't just go. You can't just say, "Hey, we want a national police force." But what happens is you end up getting all these people stumbling over themselves trying to get accreditations, which means that you meet certain federal guidelines or these guidelines to qualify for certain funding and things like that. And all of a sudden, the government has its hands in your police department because now you're operating with their money. And then rules and guidelines will change.
Yeah, when they say that, explain what that means. Like you're saying the rules, like now they have, because he mentioned that, but he didn't break down what that meant. So they give you money, they have more say. What do you foresee that being?
Well, I mean, if they're going to say, well, you're going to have to change your use of force policy, you're going to have to change this policy with regard to hiring and the diversity in hiring and on down that list, or you'll lose your accreditation, you'll lose your funding, and that will do what? It'll just put that community further back in crime and in perception. There's all sorts of things that would fall out if the good people start to leave, which they are in massive amounts across the country. I mean,
you left in 2020. Yes. You left,
right? Because I'm not dumb. And there's a lot of cops that have a high level of integrity, take their jobs very seriously. They train on their own dime, their own time. They work hard. Their compass points north, and they're grinding it out. To their own detriment in a lot of ways, because again, they're battling a system that they are not going to change at that micro level. But what they leave, and what the communities are going to be left with are bad cops. And when I say bad, I mean people who are incapable of doing the job well,
Right.
Intellectually or
Physically.
Yeah. Or B, you're left with corruption, because now corrupt cops will seize on the opportunity, because nature doesn't like a vacuum, and so they'll scoop up everything that they can as far as corruption goes, and that's what they're going to be left with. And the federal government putting their qualifications on what it's going to take for us to fund you and keep your department, with good technology and growth and all that stuff, is going to require policy changes, and admin will be more than happy to go along with these policy changes to get funding, and then the whole landscape changes. So they're doing it smartly, but it's already done. By the time people wake up and realize it will be done.
Too late.
Because the Trojan horse is already inside, man, and it's already opened up. It's like, oh, well, here we are.
So what do we do on a macro scale? Obviously, it has to be. I mean, I don't know. Is it a macro scale? Is it a micro scale? Does it start with the department? Does it start with the federal government reform? Like, something has to be done. Otherwise, we're in a really shitty sandwich.
Well, yeah, no. I mean, the sandwich has been made. So a tremendous shift in people's views of individual or personal responsibility, recovering a sense of individual responsibility for my life, a victor mindset, not a victim mindset in my own life, leading my family, or respectively, whoever, fill in the blank, your family, recovering the power of the nuclear family. And then you have to get involved. You have to take that, and then you have to actually get involved in your local political landscape. People are talking about, like, I don't really like politics. Dude, it doesn't matter if you like it or not. It's kind of like a fish saying, I don't like water. It doesn't really matter whether you like it. That's where you're at. It's your environment. It's the context. And so people who kind of, I think for a long time, we've become so complacent, and I include myself in that too, where it's like, bro.
Same here.
Hey man, as long as I have my coffee and I just do my thing, I keep my head down, I handle my own business, that's good enough.
I get left alone.
Yep.
Yeah.
They don't, who cares if they're grooming children through entertainment right now, as long as I can avoid it, like, it's not a big deal. And there's just so many ways in which there's so many assaults kind of inward, and we have to go on the offense is essentially what it is. We can't sit back and just play defense and then kind of bitch and moan to our base, as it were. And I've realized this too. My big mistake is that I think that I started out on social media saying I want to help communicate truth in a way in the law enforcement space that helps change people's minds. And I think that I've done that on some level in some ways.
Well, I think it shows, from that point of view, I think it shows the human side of people. Like, it's so easy to look at a law enforcement officer and not see a human being because of the job. But they lose like, at the end of the day, that's a dad, it's a husband, it's a son, just like anyone else. Like, they go home and they have to deal with all the same shit that we all have to deal with at the end of the day. You know what I mean?
Yep. Absolutely. So, I mean, I think we have to go. I just think we have to go on the offense. We have to take it seriously and not just speak to ourselves. I mean, how easy is it to swing a bat at Biden's gaffes? I mean, it's super easy. I do it all the time because he's a complete moron. But it's easy. But what does that accomplish? What am I actually doing? I can post a meme about Biden on my social media, but what have I done in my community? And I think that's where we, in this age, at a macro level, the agenda is this: get everyone plugged into the metaverse. Keep everyone thinking only at a macro level. Keep them divided on their thought sides. And I think the battle is moving from digital to analog and taking the battle into the real world where I really live, having real world conversations, having real world influence, not to be falsely under the impression that if I have X number of thousands of people on social media that follow me or friend request me or whatever else, that they're my friends. It does, like, real life doesn't work that way. And we just got like this giant shroud over our collective eyes, and we've got to like start poking holes in it and go on the offense and hope that we can do that over a long enough period of time to start pushing back at what's happening.
Are you sure you didn't listen to that podcast? Because this is all.
I'm positive.
Really
I'm positive that.
He basically
positive
said
that it popped up on my screen in my car on the way here as a new episode that I need to listen to. And I was like, oh,
you're going to
listen to that.
That one needs to go freaking viral, which it probably won't, but that's the one out of all the ones that I've done. And I've done some freaking awesome podcasts over the years. That one at this point in time needs to be listened to. Like, because his point of view, he basically said, we've been tricked. Mm-hmm. We've been tricked into only focusing on the federal government and not at the community government. Not at the city council, not at the board of school, board of education. You know,
bro, it's scary. You don't even want to go out and ask seniors in high school what the 3 branches of government are. You don't even want to ask that, dude.
Yeah, it's and he goes, and basically that's how we fix things. You want to fix things, you fix things at your city, county, and state level. He said he's like, they want you to focus on the big fish because that's something they can manipulate very easily. Mm-hmm. He said, they said again, they did the exact same thing in Venezuela, and so you're echoing something, and I'm guilty of it, dude. I fell right into it. I fell right into it, and I didn't before the pandemic. No one even knew on social media what my religious or political affiliations was, because I didn't think it mattered. Yeah, I was like, dude, listen, I've served 12 years in the military. I served in special operations. I went to fucking war. I was gone from 12 years of service. I was gone for 6. When it was done, and then I contracted for a year and a half. When I was done, dude, I was like, I'm done, bro. I don't want any of your bullshit. Right. I just want to go make my money, run my businesses, grow my family, and that's it. Be left alone. Yeah. And then you're in good company, right? You go back to the Revolutionary War, dude. You're not an idiot, and you know our history. Right. Most people wanted to just farm and raise their families. They didn't want to fight in the Revolutionary War. They didn't want to do that. It was a very small minority. It was only 40,000 people that fought in that thing. Like, it's not a lot of people that stood up and actually said, "Oh, hell no." Like, and I don't think it takes 40 million of us. I think it just takes. I mean, look how small of a minority of people shift media and news. I mean, look how small of a percentage of people that actually really believe that stuff. It's very small, but yet they have a tremendous amount of influence. Single digits, small single digits. Yeah. And it wasn't until, and it's funny because it goes on to talk about that we got tricked into be calling the silent majority. You guys are the majority. Just stay silent. Just shh. And he did, and they did until a bunch of cops raided my gym. You know about that, right? Yeah, ridiculous. That was one of the final easy exits for me, because when I shifted from full time to part time and still kept my foot like in both worlds. I remember that. Yeah. Yeah. So it was like, for me, showing up to work and they're like, "Oh, you have to go check on these businesses, these restaurants, and make sure there's no people in it." I'm like, "Why?" Well, because of the governor's thing. I'm like, "That's not the law. I'm not enforcing that. That's not my business. I'm not the arm of the governor to enforce executive orders. That's not how life works. That's not how the system works." Well, the chief says you have to. Well, the chief can suck my nuts. I ain't doing that. Like, that's not going to happen. But so how many people were gung ho to do that? Too many. It was for in that season of life. The reality is I think most places didn't really give business owners a hard time. I think most places didn't, but even cops like wearing the masks around at work and all that stuff. And I'm just like,
that was a moment for me that was super sad, honestly, because I had been kind of beating the drum for so long of, hey, listen, most cops are good people. You don't see most of the normal, perfectly fine interactions and perfectly executed arrests and everything else. They don't make the news. They don't make the body cam footage because they're boring and they're normal. And but during that time, I'm just like, man, I just can't. I can't justify that. I can't justify this nonsense. And I'm like, and way too many people went along to get along. And that was a moment for me. That was the wake up call where it's like, I got to start being ready to do what is necessary to guard my family and be ready. Like, people think I'm kidding when I say, like, I have like multiple plans for where I will go if I need to get somewhere that's not my house.
Right.
Like, some in this state, some in others. And but dude, there's a lot of hope. I think I don't want to be all doom and gloom. Like, I have a friend of mine, he pastors a congregation in Southern Ohio, and he's not alone. There's several people beginning to really he has this big thing called county before country, and they're strategically choosing in their denomination to send people out to start churches. And as they're raising people up in those shared values and beliefs, they're strategically picking places that are big enough and close enough to something major that they can actually have influence, and small enough to actually change on a local level. And so they're stacking school boards, they're stacking businesses, political offices, and they're really shifting a culture in small town America. And that's what's going to happen. We have to get involved in those local levels.
Because we got complacent in the American dream. They're like, it's awesome, life is good. And they took advantage. So now we have to go backwards, and like you said, we have to get loud, and we got to take the fight back to them, and not necessarily not fighting. It's not what I'm saying, but effort, work, sacrifice.
The advantage we have is that they're stupid. Like the far left is really dumb, and but we've given them. We've phoned it in. We've just been we've been phoning it in, and it's time. I think when we really step up, I think we can push back and gain some serious ground in a very quick period of time. And I think it comes down to those shared values put into practice on an analog level.
I think it might have been you that posted it when all that stuff was going down, or maybe even afterwards, talking about the people that, going back to the cops that were either enforcing these executive orders or just going along with it, or whatever, being quiet about it. It reminds me, and I think I think you posted about it, talking about the Nazi Reich, saying how many people that were involved in that literally their excuse was, I was just doing what I was told. Yeah, exactly. And did you feel that same? Did you make that connection back then, or is that something that happened afterwards, or did you even hear that? Like, hey man, I'm doing a job. I gotta promote. I gotta support my family. Was that even a thought? I don't know that I lost friends, but I lost a lot of people that followed me, and because we were on different sides there. Yeah. Like we were on very, very different sides. There is no, well, I mean, I just wouldn't have enforced unlawful things, right? Yeah. Like it's freaking scary when one politician, a governor in our case, and in your case, really, across the country, where one person can make an executive order and armed men go out and enforce it. That's freaking scary, dude. Like, to where maybe cops should be only enforcing laws that have actually gone through due process, right? To where the people have voted and determined that this is a law that we want to enact that is for the good of our community.
one person having that kind of executive power over
I literally
over
asked,
men with guns is a bad idea.
I hope that guy can never work in law enforcement again. But I asked that clown when one of the times he came. I'm not sure it was the raid. I think it was afterwards when I opened back up or whatever. But I asked him. I said, "Hey, excuse." Oh, that's what it was. When I wouldn't give in to their like threats, when they knew that they couldn't waiver me. I mean, you have to take me to jail. I was prepared to go to jail. I mean, what are they going to charge me with? I go to jail, then what? I mean, they're going to let me go.
Charge you with violating the governor's orders? What is that? What's the penalty for that? I don't know. What?
But so they switched their focus on the members. So they were harassing the members of the gym. Mm-hmm. And that really bothered me. I was like, dude, you can beat me up. You can hit me, do whatever you want to do with me. But these are just tax-paying, law-abiding citizens trying to work out some frustration in the gym.
Yeah.
Balance out their mental health a little bit. Get some dopamine going. Feeling good, you know? Trying to get looking good naked. That's our goal. Look good naked. You know what I mean? Just leave them alone.
Or I don't know if being healthy is the number one way to battle this pandemic.
Right.
God forbid we stop people from accomplishing that.
Accomplishing being healthy? No.
Yeah.
But I asked him, and it's on the video. I said, hey, what statute are they breaking? What is the actual statute that you're going to charge these people with? I think my business partner is the one that got it on video on his phone. I asked the question, he literally just rolling up his window. That was it. He didn't answer.
Yeah.
So there you go.
And that's it. That's it. Yeah.
Anyways,
it's crazy.
So was that a strategic move to leave law enforcement right around then, or did it happen outside of that, or?
No, I would have. As far as I was concerned, I would have just kept my part-time gig. I mean, I was a little frustrated because when you go to something like that where you switch a department and you go to a smaller department basically that has a handful of full-time guys and you get part-time to fill in for vacations and all that stuff. I mean, I had been a cop for all those years and now all of a sudden I'm the weekend midnight guy. And I mean, there was a lot of Monday mornings where I'm like, what the hell am I doing? Why am I doing this? Yeah. But it still kept coming back to going like, I'm doing this on that weekend for the same reasons I did it the first time, right? Like for me, I'm like, this is more about me than it is about anything else. But then when that whole Rayshard Brooks shooting happened in the Wendy's parking lot down in Atlanta, that was like a big wake up for me. And that was all happening. At the same time as the pandemic stuff was coming. And it just all kind of came to a head because I was like, okay, I'm off doing business now. My family has gone through this decade of a lot of difficulty. We lost people very dear to us, through our connections in law enforcement. And anybody that's been in law enforcement long enough is going to lose people that matter to them, and it's going to, you go through that whole experience.
That's the real trauma right there. And I try to explain people that about in the military. Same is like killing bad guys is not what bothers people. Yeah, it's losing your brothers and your sisters. That's the shit that stays with you forever. That's
for sure, because bad guys are gonna be the cops and robbers is going to forever be a thing, and that's kind of part of the deal. But yeah, you go through all those experiences, and I think, what am I doing here? Because this guy, Garrett Rolfe, who got strung up and fired within 24 hours of shooting Rayshard Brooks, and totally justifiable, and he gets railroaded, charged. Now he's since kind of come back from that and winning in the legal side of things, but I'm starting to see this happen. I go, I am one traffic stop, one call away from being that guy. And for what? Weekend warrior shit? I'm like, my family was willing to go along and support me and put me out as a potential one of those names that would be lost. They supported in that. And now they could take everything that I've worked so hard for on my business side overnight simply because I do my job. And I'm like, and then combine that right on the heels of all this pandemic stuff. I'm just like, now is the right time for me to say, I'm not I'm not meant for this anymore because for all those reasons. One, my family doesn't deserve to keep doing the stress, and two, I'm not going to be that example. They're just not going to make that of me. They won't catch me slipping like that. So
yeah, no kidding. Did you talk to your wife when you were like, hey, I think I'm going to pull out?
Yeah, I mean, that conversation was had, and I think ultimately it was the right time. Kind of like, are you sure? Because, I mean, people who really know me, they know, like, this job wasn't just a
paycheck.
I don't know. Yeah, it wasn't just that for me. God,
it's not
a paycheck.
Like you couldn't.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, right.
I was broke as a joke, dude. Like, yeah, this is hence the reason I started doing side hustles again, and had to like do something because you can only work so many hours of overtime before you want to lose your mind.
Well, and not to mention that's a whole other issue with that job, right? Like you're getting people to you're paying the bottom of what you get is the bottom. Like unless you just like, hey, I want to go serve the people, roll the dice,
Yeah, you want to. When people sign up for this job now, they're basically saying, if you're the right kind of person, you're like, do you want to do this for a ridiculously low amount of money? Do you want your entire life, personal and professional, to constantly be under a microscope?
Right.
Do you want to walk around a landmine of you're the next guy for the next whatever number of years? And that's where I think we have a lot to learn from the military in law enforcement is you have deployments and then you have a period where you're not deployed. And the problem is in law enforcement, your law enforcement career is 100 yards football field, and they tell you, okay, there's 1,000 mines across this field. Retirement is in the other end zone. Now, only one of these mines will blow up. See ya in 25 years. That's what it is.
That's a great analogy.
And so
because
people are like, well, it's a relatively safe job, statistically speaking. You're right. Yes. All things being equal, I'm never going to shoot somebody.
Right.
And I'm never going to be shot. That is like yes, statistically. But
there's something
that 1 in 1,000 is always an ever-present thing every single day. And while you're dealing with that, you've got your admin and you've got the public constantly scrutinizing every single word out of your mouth, every single action you take behind the wheel, every word you type in a report,
it's all being recorded.
For 25 years, you were being scrutinized, and we're just not built for it. Very few people are built for that.
So I did a podcast a long time ago. It's actually, I think, the third top performing podcast on the Always Forward podcast, and it was with a I don't know what you would call him. They basically like the SWAT, kind of like the special operations of law enforcement.
Yeah.
He had a really big case, and he basically got. Do you remember the Chicken Man from Breaking Bad?
Yes.
Yes, he got that guy for North Carolina.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a big ordeal.
Wow.
He was like trucking meth through his shipping company, like lots of meth.
Right.
And anyways, they tracked the money, and he actually got him through the money. And anyways, He came on. Now he's a marshal, but he came on the podcast, and he was talking about that story. But he was talking about how he was also former military, but how we go on deployment, right, and then we come home. Now, of course, most guys are like dealing with that stuff, at home.
Sure,
it comes home.
Mm-hmm.
But you guys get a bad call, and what he calls it, he goes, you have to be from shit to shine in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Like you leave some kid being shot and you're done, and then you're home in 5 minutes. Like home with your kids and your wife.
Yep. I was that
concept was like, holy shit.
Yeah, people don't tend to think of it like that. And I didn't I had family that was in law enforcement, and like I was friends with cops, so like I kind of had a vibe for the culture, but I remember phase 2 in FTO. I was working midnight, so field training for me. After the academy, you have like 4 months of field training, and then you're on probation. So phase 2, I went to a house where there was like, I don't know how many kids, dude, a dozen or more kids in this little cardboard shack, and somebody rolled over and literally just suffocated like an infant, a few months old. And so I'm in the back of the ambulance doing CPR on this infant and dealing with the fact of I've got all these morons inside that just killed a kid, basically. And then we get to the hospital. My job's done, right? Like, I tried to save the kid's life, and this happens. And then what happens? I get to go home and chill out for a couple days. No. That was at 1 a.m. I still have 6 hours of my shift left. I'm shagging more calls. By an hour later, I'm on a different call, man. Maybe I'm backing somebody up on a traffic stop and someone's giving me lip and whatever's going on. It's like, yeah, you do that. Humans are not made to do that for 25 years. That's a really bad thing to do to people.
Yeah, because and people talk about, and this is one of the things when you get into therapy, I'm very, very vocal and against exposure therapy. Exposure therapy is basically like what the VA does, or what traditional therapy is like, let's talk about all the things that happen to you.
Yeah.
It's like, well, what that is that's exactly how you create child soldiers in Africa. You just expose them to horrible shit over and over and over and over and over until your brain doesn't care anymore. Yeah. We're supposed to feel these things. We're supposed to be sad. We're supposed to have empathy. We're supposed to feel the loss of a child. These are normal things.
Yep.
But when you desensitize these people, and like you said, like you deal with the death of an infant, of just some idiots, some drugged up mother that rolls over on their infant, and actually it's weird. It sucks that you just told that story, because that literally just happened down in Wilmington to another law enforcement officer that goes to our gym, our jiu-jitsu gym. Same exact story. They had a bunch of kids. She got high on meth and rolled over, and that was it. Anyways, but then you just have to go to the next thing. And what happened? And then this is what bothers me is you go on that call and somebody gets lippy, and you just had to deal with this, and you're frazzled.
Yeah. And and from the perspective of the person who is like, well, why is this cop being such a jerk to me?
Right.
And rightfully so, right? Like, if they're like making a complaint and expecting the police to come and take a report and empathize with their situation, yeah, from their perspective, I would say 100%. You have you have a fair expectation to be treated professionally and kindly, and with all due respect to your circumstances, you deserve that. Right. But I might not be able to give it to you, or whatever else.
Your situation seems really fucking stupid to me after what I just dealt with just 2 seconds ago.
Yeah. And you have to learn. And good cops do learn how to sort of navigate that. But there has to be a sense of like, the only thing that I think help me is faith. I mean, everybody has to have a way to process
you need an
what
anchor.
They're seeing, what they're dealing. Otherwise, I mean, you would just devolve into absolute despair if you did this job, without a framework like that.
Yeah, I was at 12 years. I was turning into that person. I was turning into that person that I was like, if I continue going down this road, I already didn't like the person I was becoming. And I was like, if I continue down this road, I'm going to be that person. I got to exit. But anyways, so what did you do, or did you not do very well that, on that shit to shine in 5 minutes? Like, did you have a method of like going home and being a dad again and being a husband?
Yeah, I don't know that I did it perfectly. For me, everything was, I had really good mentorship, especially from my second chief. The second guy that I served under after the first people were basically just straight up liars. Yeah. This guy, like, I remember early on when I went to the new department, we were hitting a door, and I look over, and we were stacking up to go into this house, and I see the chief roll up. He had heard the call on his radio on the way into work, and just pulls out. He's got a Ram, and he's like stepping in front of me, ready to hit this door. And I'm like, oh, hell yeah. I'm like, this guy knows what's up, right? And he gave me some really good advice early on in my career of things to avoid. gave me a little booklet that a lot of cops get, but a lot of cops don't take seriously enough, called Emotional Survival for Law Enforcement. It's a short read, but it's really good. And so I digested that, and then just focusing on faith and family and fun. I kept my hobbies, right? Like I kept things that I did. There's a trap that law enforcement officers fall into where their circle narrows to three to five dudes that they talk to all the time. They try to get on the same shift with those guys, and so they become very close, but they also become very insulated. And I think that that's a really dangerous thing because
it's an identity. It becomes part of your identity. Yeah.
And you start to get super desensitized, and all you do when you get negative is then you just reinforce the negative with each other, and it's almost like the blind leading the blind, and you can't get out of the ditch. Yeah. And so for me, I think what kind of saved me is that I started writing in 2014, and I started blogging, and that's where I got my start. Like I wasn't even a social media guy. Like I was on Facebook, but I mean I used it to connect with what Facebook was, connecting with college people. Like, oh, I graduated with them in the 90s. Like, oh, this is kind of cool. Like
I remember those days.
I wasn't a social media guy, but I started writing, and that was really cathartic for me and very helpful for me. And I started seeing people reach out saying, wow, that was really helpful. And I was getting out of my bubble. I was only 5 years into my career, and that's like that 3 to 5 years where you start to get a little, like, you realize I'm not changing the world. What am I going to do about this? And I went and just started sharing my thoughts, and that was very helpful for me to keep me out of it. And then jiu-jitsu for me was a lifesaver, probably, in terms of like, now I'm sharing the mats with just a bunch of people, right? Like not cops. I'm hanging out with non-cops, and obviously I had people at church, and so I had relationships that I was fortunate enough to have outside of that world.
Do you feel like being a cop never really, I mean, it's funny that we say that because your persona is Mike the Cop, but do you feel like your identity was never wrapped up with like what you did?
I probably had a range throughout my life. I think probably by the time, so when I first got into law enforcement, about a year into my law enforcement career, my brother, like my flesh and blood brother, was shot and killed. So also a cop. So when that happened, I think that for the next couple of years, I went really into that line where this is my whole identity, right? This is what it's about. And then I think that I sort of kind of came out of that, and then certainly when I started writing and got exposed to a broader world, I was able to sort of open up and not just be so focused on my own day-to-day experience as a cop that I started kind of opening back up again. So I didn't get stuck there. I think I went there, but I don't think I stayed there for too long.
I think a lot of law enforcement, and actually I've given long form 4 to 8 hour leadership lessons. Actually, it's funny. One of the times that cop that got fired, he tried to harass me or arrest me, was the same day. And the reason I didn't fight him back was I had to go catch a flight to give a leadership seminar to the Chiefs state union. I don't know. They have like a union of chiefs for the whole state.
Sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I had to go give like an 8 hour leadership lesson on transition to these chiefs. And I was like, I really want to argue with you, officer, about how you're harassing and illegal, doing illegal operations. But I really have to go talk to these chiefs. It was funny. And he was threatening to arrest me, and I'm like, man, that would be ironic. But anyways, that is a big deal with first responders and especially long careers and military, is it becomes who you are. And then when it ends, and as you know, it does end, regardless whether you want it to or not, at some point that will end. And if you don't have other things, and if you don't have other people, you're going to be crushed, man. You're going to get crushed.
That's what everybody does, is they kill themselves for the job.
Yeah.
They make it there 25 years, they retire, then they get a security gig or a court officer gig, And when they're not there, everybody's forgotten about them at work. No, they don't. They're not
And
needed.
it shocks them, right? It's like, holy shit! Why, I thought this was a brotherhood. Why? But no, it's they move on and they forget about you. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a handful of guys that I still talk to. Everybody else, I could fall right in. If we sat at a backyard barbecue or if I went to the department and I sat down, I could fall right back into conversation and smoking and joking and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, they're not keeping up with my life. That there's a handful, but people, they get out and then it's just a big deflation. And if you have no sense of purpose beyond that job, that's why they die, man. They eat too many Cheetos and
if I'm not a cop, then who am I?
I have nothing left. Yeah,
nothing left. I'm not a special operator. Who am I? And that's such a scary thing. I mean, hell, I wrote a book about it.
Yes, you did.
So, did you happen to read that?
Yeah.
Excellent.
That's how I first heard of you.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, man. That
I realized, like, I saw some of your YouTube videos on the gym harassment stuff.
Yeah.
Which I saw, but I didn't pay attention to, your name or who you were. Really, I was just more interested in the topic of it itself. Yeah, I'm like, that's stupid. That sucks. And so I was aware of that content, and then I don't know how I saw the book, The Excommunicated Warrior, and I was like, oh wow, this sounds good. And then I read that, and I think that I tagged you or something like that in a story, like, hey, I just read this is really good, and then that's when I started following you, and then whatever. So that's good stuff, and we'll be talking about that soon too. Yeah, but yes, huge encouragement.
That is the number. I'd say probably the number 2 purchaser of that book is law enforcement.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right. So pivoting to more happier days. You get out, Mike the cop becomes a thing, and then you said, okay, you went part-time. What did you flow into? Like what was the transition like? What did you get into?
So the first transition was to a startup company based out of Tampa, where I was helping to set up marketing for social media influencers in our space. That sort of a couple of law enforcement type creators, a couple of military guys, setting up their stores, trying to do some marketing for them, running a print shop, basically kind of taking point on this startup company from a marketing and logistics standpoint. Okay. So that project lasted me a year, which was the commitment, hey, basically that was my role. And then I stepped out of that and really had kind of hit my stride with working on Mike the Cop more full time. And then another buddy of mine had gotten into real estate when he got injured on the job and had just moved states and was lateraling to departments and tore all the tendons in his gun hand and couldn't be a cop anymore. So he got into real estate and was telling me, you'd love it. I eventually get my license and start doing it part-time. That grows. And then one night over bourbon, we were like, I was able to transition into real estate and was a cop. You were able to do that. How did we both do that? And basically we kind of realized the skills that we had developed over our careers were perfect for a service-based business if you apply it right and understand it right. So, we got good coaches and mentors from the real estate world and kind of really shaped a whole system. And then our project was born. We call it the 10-7 project. So now we're helping cops, veterans, other public safety professionals transition into real estate business and then provide the coaching to them that kind of gives them, here's what this looks like to get from start to
what's the connection with 10-7?
So my department's never used 10 codes really, but 10-7, the most common use, and different departments have different, they'll use the same numbers for different things, but the most common use is you're unavailable now. So if you're 10-8, you're clear and available, you're clear from your last call. 10-7 means you're busy. You can't be reached. So it's kind of like, hey, I've gone 10-7. You can't get me no more on the job. So that's the gist of it.
So what's you have a URL for that?
Yeah, it's the 10-7project.com. So TEN, then the number 7. And yeah, man, we don't sell it. We have nothing to sell anybody. You can join our team and we would benefit from you succeeding, but we don't sell courses. We don't sell. Yeah, I don't have any of that. So
Awesome.
we're really truly on a mission to help 10,000 veterans and police officers and other first responders.
To give them another road, to travel. And I tell people all the time, man, like that's like they're like, Nick, what do I do? I'm like, dude, you do. You fucking do. Whatever.
Yep.
I don't give a shit what it is, because by doing, you will then lead to the thing that you want to do. But
yes.
just sitting on the couch being sad, it's not going to get you to the thing that you want to do. So get up and get outside and go start doing. So like if it's, like, well, I don't know what to do. Okay, well go 10-7 project. Go do this. Go do that. Go.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows, man? But you got to do.
Yeah.
You got to do. So
Absolutely.
What else?
That's it, man. I'm trying to kind of figure out, like I said, I'm kind of going to retire the Mike the Cop thing. I think what made Mike the Cop work was that I was always just myself. I made sketch videos and stuff, but I mean, really it was all based on real life experiences anyway. Like that's why
it's funny.
Yeah, exactly. Cause it's real, So, and I feel like, man, 2 years after being removed from this, the further I am removed from day-to-day police work, the more I'm just, not only am I just not in a place where I'm not thinking about it, but dude, like I realized I was staying attached in a lot of ways to some of the negativity about it, to where I'm living all of the bullcrap with it, with my content. I keep putting myself in these negative patterns to keep this content alive, but that's not really what I'm doing day to day in my life. And if I'm going to continue to be authentic and feel free in being myself and content, then I need to kind of make that shift. And the audience that wants to stick around with me and listen, great. And if they don't, that's okay too. Because
same thing, bro. Same thing. Like, dude, I'm 10 years removed from special operations. 10 years. I am not. My day revolves around being a business owner and a dad and a husband and a mentor and a coach. Like, that's my day. Those are the things
what it
that
should
I
be
wanna
is
talk about.
I thought this last night, by the way, when I started the terminal list last night on I think it's on Amazon or whatever. So I was like, dude, why is Nick not the main character? That should not be Chris Pratt. It should be you.
I got to give it to Chris Pratt, though. He did a damn fine job.
I'm only an episode and a half in. No spoilers.
My God. Well, I'm going to spoil it because I gotta cut it and make a reel out of this. I don't know what episode it is, but they bring up Marsoc.
Uh-huh.
And the guy, the actor that plays his friend, the CIA guy or whatever.
Uh-huh.
He goes, I don't know, the Marines, Raiders, Marsoc, whatever the fuck they're calling themselves today. And I was like, oh, ouch. I like you guys, but damn, man, that cut deep. No, man. I'm so stoked for Jack, and we finished that series. Holy shit. Put Jack Ryan to shame.
Yeah, I was expecting, I don't know what, I guess, I thought this is just going to be him going out on badass missions and stuff. And like, I was like, wow, this is not what I was expecting.
So many levels.
Like, wow, this is something.
And I think and I had to, like, my wife was watching it with me, and I had to like stop and explain certain things, right? Because they did a very, very good job of highlighting the different levels of that. Obviously, it's a little bit of Hollywood, right? There's a Hollywood aspect to it, but the layers of being a special operator and doing that job and essentially in some way getting treated certain ways on the back end of that is all very. And of course, Jack, understands that to on a personal level. But I would love to do that. One of my all time goals, and I'm gonna hit it one day, is to be in a 80s action movie.
All right, an 80s themed action movie?
No, not 80s themed, but remember, like in the 80s, like the action, the movies that we grew up with,
Stallone, like Predator,
Chuck Norris, Delta Force, all those kind of like, like
eating a rat while hanging upside down in a POW camp.
Yeah, like how that to me, shooting rockets from a helicopter or a motorcycle or I don't know, whatever, man. To me, it would just be an absolute dream come true. It would be so much fun to do an action movie that way. So, okay, so Mike, we're killing Mike the Cop. He's going to be buried.
Yeah, I'm just gonna be Mike. Well, I don't know what the future holds.
Just Mike.
Yeah,
just Mike.
I've looked into that. That name's not available, so I'll probably have to do like 10-7 Mike or something like that, and then somebody's gonna hear this before I do it, and then they're gonna hold it over my head and make
Dude, that's
buy or
happened
something.
to me. That's happened to me before I could take stuff. They've taken it from me.
Yeah.
So what does that mean for the podcast? What does it mean for your communication? Like, you don't have to have an answer, and that's okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, so last year I started a podcast with another guy named Eric Tanzi. We were on a network. We're not anymore. And so we have like a variety of styles of shows that kind of touch on from law enforcement case breakdowns to true crime cases. We brought on a basic white girl to tell true crime for us.
Is this Failure to Stop or is something?
Yeah, Failure to Stop.
Okay.
And so we have like 5 different episode styles, and we just run it through the same feed. And so that's grown a lot in the last year, and that project will continue. And so that's where people, if they really want to know what I think about, current things, law enforcement situations or whatever, then there will be an outlet for that for my audience that's interested in keeping up with what I would have to say about law enforcement stuff. But it scales it such back that I just turn on the camera a couple times a week and just be myself and talk about it. But so there's that, and then we're going to grow the 10-7 social media. And really, I mean, the next 3 to 5 years is going all in on growing this large network of first responders doing real estate together, and
so
I'm gonna pour my soul into that thing.
So those are your 2 big focuses.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah.
And jiu-jitsu. I got to do jiu-jitsu.
You got to jiu-jitsu. Yeah. What did you say to me one time? You were like, "Listen, man, I'm a purple belt. I don't suck at jiu-jitsu."
I always have to do that caveat. Like if I ever criticize like techniques or what I see, I'm like, listen. Yeah. I'm gonna preface this like I'm not God's gift to jiu-jitsu. Like you very may well just smash me, but I'm not terrible.
I'm not terrible.
I'm not just gonna get murked at a normal academy, right? Yeah, stick me on the mats with Gordon Ryan and his crew, and I'm probably gonna feel like an infant in the hands of a grandfather with old man, whatever it is. But I don't suck, but I don't go around claiming to be really awesome either.
Right, and it's what a beautiful thing about jiu-jitsu is like no matter how good you get, you still kind of suck.
Gosh, yeah. There's so many levels to the game, isn't there? Jeez.
Like you just like I've been at it for 3 years, and I'm like, does this get better? Everybody's like, nah, it's pretty much the same every day.
Nope, it never does. I thought that too. I'm like, man, by the time I get to purple belt, this should get easy. And now I'm like on the cusp of my brown belt, and I'm just like, man, there's just still just no easy rolls, man.
Is there a light at the end of the tunnel, Mike? Like, do I have something to look forward to here?
And then what am I going to do when I get my black belt? Jump into Master Worlds where this guy's been a black belt longer than I've been trained. I'm just going to get destroyed,
That to me, Matt, Epic Roll, told me that. He goes, because he just got promoted, 6 months ago or something like that?
Yeah.
Congratulations to you, Matt. If you don't know, and I'm gonna plug Epic Roll. Awesome t-shirts, rash guards, everything. If you like jiu-jitsu, go get some Epic Roll stuff. I mean, the guy's clever. I'll leave it at that. My first one was the neon belly because I had my ribs popped by somebody. So my wife gets me a neon belly shirt. I'm like, thanks, babe. That was my first.
My first class, I was a white belt, and they taught neon belly in my first class, and I was like. He's like, all right, we're going to cover neon belly. And I was thinking Neon.
That's what the shirt is.
Weird names, right? Yeah. And I was like, what? And then I was still so dumb, like founded by like what? And then I'm like, oh, knee on the belly. That makes sense. This is grappling. I get it. I can do this.
Anyways, so check them out. But he told me, he's like, he got promoted to black belt, and then he went and did his competition. He's like, dude, I'm a black belt, but this guy's been doing jiu-jitsu longer than I've been.
White belts of black belts.
Yeah, right. He's like, I'm basically starting over. You know what I mean? I'm an ass clown.
Yeah, man.
So I guess it's a good thing though, right? Because you never peak, right? The best is yet to come. You never peak.
Yeah, and that says a lot about people that when you do see people that have been in jiu-jitsu that long, it says something. You know, it says something about the person's character
Yeah.
and their tenacity. If they've been in it that long, man, like you start seeing brown belts and black belts, dude. That's like they've shown some commitment.
Yeah, and that's and I think that if you're, people are gonna say whatever, but I really do think, man, if you're in business, you should do jiu-jitsu because of that.
Yeah.
Because because one, it's a great stress reliever. It makes you more confident. Two, it obviously if you, God forbid, you ever need to get into a situation, you know how to physically manhandle someone. I love the breakdown videos that you do of people, of cops that don't do jiu-jitsu, and you're like, God, look at this guy. And I can only imagine from your point of view of how frustrating that is.
Yes.
But three, it's really, man, it's like you just said, it's the work, right? It's the never-ending work, because you don't get better. I mean, you get better, but you don't ever really get better. There's no finish line. There's no point of arrival. It's just the work. And I think that if you're in business, it's something that you really need to understand as well. Is like even if you sold your company, there's no finish line. It's just work, and then it's the next thing, and it's just more work after that.
Well, that's the lie. And what it does is it combats the lie that we feed people through our education system, is that there is an arrival point. Right. Yeah, you get the degree, then you get your spouse, and you get the picket fence, and you at some point arrive, and you'll feel completely satisfied when you get there.
It's a lie.
And it's a lie. It's just not true. Yeah. And the more you begin to understand that about jiu-jitsu, and you start opening your eyes to like how that relates to business, to life, you're like,
your relationships.
I'm not retirement isn't a word that exists for me. I'm just gonna keep doing until I can't do anymore, and then that's it. That transition to what's next is just. Yeah, that's what's next. It never ends.
It's just a slow, like there's no blow up. There's no any of that. It's just a slow, steady climb all the way. Yeah. And those who are successful, the ones that just don't quit climbing, don't quit doing the work. Yeah. So where can people find you, Mike?
If right now, if they look up Mike the Cop, I'm probably going to be the guy that does it. There's a cop in New York that is really mad that I took that name. And you might find him, and he hates me, so you'll have fun watching him make fun of me sometimes. But other than that, you'll probably stumble into me.
So go find Mike the Cop and follow him right now. Instagram?
Yeah, Instagram's great. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, whatever.
Go find him and follow him right now, because he's going to change his name, and you're going to be like, where do I find this guy? But if you go on Mike the Cop on YouTube, it goes forever. It literally goes forever. All right, man. And then your podcast, and then the 10-7 project. We'll put all the links below. And,
dude, you're gonna be the first interview, the first guest on the 10-7 podcast, man.
We're gonna blow it.
I've been waiting for it. I've been waiting for this, because after I read, I knew when I read your book, I was like, oh, this is the first one. This is what we got to talk about.
I can break all that stuff down with my eyes closed, man.
Heck yeah!
And you know what? I'm gonna share a story that nobody knows about on your podcast. I'm gonna Mike the Cop drop. Can't say Mike drop because that's Mike Bridlin. But I'm gonna Mike the Cop drop on the 10-7 podcast.
I love it.
All right, guys, listen. If you know someone who needs this podcast, don't be an island to yourself. Don't be a keeper of the badge. Go share this information. Share this message with people. They need to hear it. And then you know the deal. Give us a thumbs up. Let's beat the damn algorithm. Because the people do not want you to hear this information. So if you're hearing it, share it with somebody else that needs to hear it. Pay it forward. Until then, thanks, Mike, and we'll see everybody on the next episode.